The International Agency for Research on Cancer, even in the 90s of the last century, identified 3 specific species of parasites that cause cancer in humans. There are scientific studies that say these parasites are incredibly dangerous, but unfortunately, this is still not being talked about. There is no talk at all about anti-parasitic prevention, about the need to do proper tests, or about the need to deworm yourself. It's still considered some kind of whim. But today, I will show you what these parasites are, how they affect our bodies, which organs they attack, how you can notice them in yourself and remove them before a serious problem develops, and how they can destroy our bodies in this way. So make sure to watch until the end. My name is Natalia Samarets. I'm a naturopath, and on my channel we discuss natural ways to support your health. And imagine that there's an uninvited guest living in your body. It doesn't necessarily make itself known. You have no idea it's there, but it is there. And the longer it stays in your body, the more it changes the environment, it changes the tissues and cells to suit itself, so it feels good and comfortable. And in the meantime, it causes inflammation and leads to the development of very serious diseases. It's well known that parasites generally disrupt the bacterial flora in the intestines, lower our immunity, affect our nervous system and our psyche, and among other things, they can cause cancer. When we talk about cancer and its causes, what do we usually mention? Genetics and lifestyle. About pollution, but parasites are not mentioned, which is why this topic is really neglected in our medicine. But look at what scientific research says. When it comes to the first parasite that very often causes serious ailments, it's Schistosoma. It's quite easy to get infected with the larvae of this parasite. While swimming in freshwater bodies like rivers, lakes, or beaches, it penetrates our body through the skin. And at first, a person may feel some mild itching or muscle aches, but very often this is ignored because at some point the itching disappears, the muscle pain also goes away, and the person doesn't pay attention to it anymore. And the parasite penetrates into the venous system, in the kidneys, in the bladder, and at first it causes inflammation. And from time to time, a person gets cystitis, there is pain, burning when urinating, and most often we treat it as a urinary tract infection. A person gets treated, but the problem comes back. Then there's another round of treatment, and after a while the problem returns again. It seems these are bacterial infections or weakened immunity. Hardly anyone would think that it could be a parasite that lays eggs on the surface of the bladder. Calcifications appear there, serious inflammations develop, and over time there may also be blood in the urine. In women, it even happens that this parasite causes inflammations in the reproductive system. Well, which woman going to the gynecologist with some problems hears that maybe it's worth getting tested for parasites? It usually doesn't come to mind, but very often that's exactly when the parasite is already in the body, showing those first symptoms, and we ignore them. However, over time, it's exactly where there's inflammation that a cancerous change develops. 2 other very dangerous parasites are the Chinese liver fluke and the Eastern liver fluke. In general, in Asian countries, in China, this parasite is very common. That's why in those countries it's like the incidence rate of bile duct cancers is very high because this parasite lives in the liver, bile ducts, and gallbladder. How can you catch it? Both of them? Most often by eating undercooked or raw fish. These are fish that also live in freshwater bodies. So be careful, dear ones, if you like sushi. And a person who gets infected with such a parasite, at first it can be indigestion, stomach pain, diarrhea, but usually such symptoms can also appear when someone gets food poisoning or eats something bad, and we don't pay much attention to it because these symptoms are temporary. Later, this becomes chronic when the parasite enters the bile ducts, possibly causing colic pain near the liver. People usually say, I think I ate something bad. You may experience bile duct inflammation, gallbladder inflammation, or develop gallstones. Then you wonder, what did I do to suddenly have these issues? And hardly anyone thinks that it could be parasites, which is very interesting, and at the same time very dangerous, because these particular liver parasites have two ways of acting. Besides causing chronic inflammation, they can also lead to cancer developing there. They are also able, first of all, to mask themselves, to hide from the immune system and modulate it in such a way that it simply doesn't see them. They become invisible to our immune system, and that's why even antibodies may not appear in the blood. Because the body produces antibodies in response to an intruder it has identified. And if that intruder is masking itself and also modulating something in the immune system, then there can be a problem with diagnosis. Additionally, it can change our cells in such a way that it provokes the production of cancerous changes and mutations within the cell itself. Well, it's a very dangerous parasite and it's not so easy to get rid of it, which is why prevention is so important when it comes to parasites that develop in our bodies. And unfortunately, we are all quite exposed to this problem. What can we do now, my dears? First, prevention. However, let's avoid raw fish. It's better to eat products that have been heat treated, where the eggs or larvae of parasites, even if they were present, will be destroyed. However, tests are also very important if symptoms appear, whether from the urinary bladder, the digestive system, the liver, or the gallbladder. You need to get tested. It's not easy, as you know from my previous videos on this topic. Why does this happen? Why don't we always detect these parasites? It's definitely easier when we know what we're looking for, because there are so many parasites. And you can't see what's going on in the body with just one test. But if we know we're looking for a fluke, for example, a blood fluke or an oriental fluke, then a specific parasite has specific antibodies. Our body produces specific antibodies in response to it, so it's worth testing for them. Sometimes it doesn't show up in the tests, and for example, your tests come back normal. It looks like everything is fine, there's no parasite, but you still have doubts because there are symptoms and you can't find another reason why they're appearing. So, my dears, when it comes to prevention, there are a few very important steps that need to be taken. Well, first of all, if we know that the parasite changes the environment around itself, changes our cells, changes tissues, and creates conditions that are suitable for itself. So the first thing is, we have to change those conditions for it. We have to make those conditions such that it will feel very uncomfortable. The second thing we pay attention to is that parasites in our bodies usually don't live alone. They have company. These can be other parasites, for example, roundworms, or they can be fungi, and most often they are fungi. For example, Candida, because Candida likes the same conditions as the parasite does, and if the parasite has already changed those conditions for itself, then Candida will most often develop there, and they will support each other. Not only do you have to eliminate Candida, meaning its excessive growth, but you also have to remember that Candida can create so-called films. These are, you could say, walls in quotation marks that it builds and hides under. It hides from various bactericidal and fungicidal substances. And there it multiplies very well. And those walls that Candida builds, they are also very favorable for parasites, because then the parasite develops and multiplies very well and strongly. And our goal is to eliminate such a wall, to weaken the functioning of the parasite from every angle. And not to mention that it's worth using bitter herbs, which generally remove inflammations that develop as a result of parasites and later lead to cancerous changes. Many herbs also have antiparasitic, antifungal, and additionally antiviral and antibacterial effects. You know that medicinal herbs are amazing. They have a very wide spectrum of action, and that's why you need to approach this in the right way. For example, besides bitter herbs, yes, like wormwood, will be very beneficial for us. Also remember about substances that have antifungal properties, which will reduce the growth of Candida, like caprylic acid. Or substances that help us destroy those walls that are being built. this so-called bacterial and fungal biofilm. These include proteolytic enzymes, among others. And with enzymes, you have to remember that they can help us in different ways because proteolytic enzymes can be used together with a meal. They support the digestion process, prevent bloating, improve the absorption of various substances in our body, and strengthen our immunity as a result. However, when taken on an empty stomach or between meals, they help break down that barrier very well, so that fungi and parasites become visible to the immune system. First of all, they become more sensitive to the effects of various active substances found in herbs and even more sensitive to different kinds of medications. Because if a fluke is diagnosed, then you can't just use preventive measures. You need to see a doctor and undergo the appropriate treatment. The doctor will prescribe the appropriate medications because a fluke is very dangerous. As I told you, we shouldn't underestimate this problem, but always, when it comes to our academic medicine, so-called and natural medicine, in the context of parasites, it's good if they go hand in hand because a parasite causes a lot of damage. Medications are usually targeted only at the parasite itself. And who will create the right conditions so that it doesn't multiply again later, after the treatment is finished? And who will remove the inflammation that has already developed? And who will strengthen the immune system? These are all natural substances. So if treatment is needed, we go to the doctor and complement it with various natural ways to support our health. If we don't have a diagnosed parasite, but we have some doubts, or maybe somewhere, it's still worth taking care of the cleanliness of our intestines. Remember that simple natural substances, unlike medications, can be used preventively. Because if we don't take care of our body when it first shows us symptoms, unfortunately, we might be very surprised later that a serious problem has developed. I write about how to take care of your intestines in general, how to cleanse them, and how to deworm your body in my book, Conscious Detox. And if you need really good supplements that will take care of the proper microbiological balance and the cleanliness of your intestines, and will make sure that all digestive processes function properly, then you should reach for dietary supplements that are dedicated to this purpose, such as complex formulas that take care of the digestive system. And I thank you very much for your attention. I will include all the links in the description below this video, and I hope this information was very useful for you. Write in the comments and see you in the next recordings. Natalia Samaretz was here with you.